Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Hall, the host of The Faces, Entrepreneurs Are People, and the CEO and founder of Telehelping Virtual Staffing Company. Today, I have a really awesome guest, Nick Garofalo. Got that one right, Nick? Welcome, Nick.
Cody, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate your coaching on the name. I've butchered a couple of our guests' names, so I'm really trying to get in the habit of not doing that. So I appreciate you being
Yeah.
my first semi-professional
Well, you're
introduction.
on a short list of people who actually got it right. So well done with your performance there, Cody.
Wonderful, Nick. Nick, in the world of outsourcing, which is where I succeed in, I want you to go ahead and tell us who you are. Who are we chatting with here today?
Yeah, well, Cody, like I said, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to be on the Faces podcast with you. So I'm based out of Atlanta. Basically been born and raised here my whole life, and I'm a founder and financial planner at Openhanded Wealth. So I started, my firm to help mainly entrepreneurs and families figure out how to align their money with what matters most: their faith, their generosity, their legacy. And, because a lot of business owners feel like they're just totally run by their business instead of the other way around. And that's no way to live, right? That's not why you started a
Yeah.
business. And so, that's what I do. I'm a dad too, a husband, and brother and son, and just all the different hats that we wear throughout the day and the week. Those all have a lasting impact on us and touch everything that we do and everywhere that we contribute. And so part of the process that we work through with clients is helping to integrate all those different pieces of ourselves into the strategy and life financial plan for us.
Oh, that's great, Nick. I'm actually quite familiar with the greater Atlanta area. I lived in Charlotte, raised there most of my life. I was in the reserve military unit there, active duty. Where is it? Start
Okay.
Saramessa? It's right next to the new ballpark. And so I was up there even before they built it. When they built it, it made the weekends even more fun to go to Atlanta, right? I like a good ball
Yeah, I
game.
bet.
Uh,
Yeah.
so so awesome. One thing you said there that I wanted to bring up because I hadn't heard it before, align them with their faith and their generosity, right? And so I'd like you to chat a little bit more about that. I'm interested because it's the first time I've heard that. And so, chat with us about, I imagine it has to do with giving to charities and tithing. So, chat with us there.
Yeah. So I I'm a Christian. I've been born and raised in the church, and I've read the Bible and I believe it with my whole heart. But for a lot of people, trying to align the beliefs I have over here in my sort of religious context is a very different, like there's this and then there's my money and my life and my decisions. And for a lot of people, those exist in two very separate places. I mean, theologians refer to this as the sacred secular divide, and we kind of have
Hmm.
our church life or our sort of religious side, and then we have our real life and the rest of our living and giving and breathing and dying. And it's a disintegrated way to live, and it
Hmm.
can produce a lot of stress and a lot of discontinuity. And so that's a space I love to live in, to help people bring those different parts of themselves into alignment. And I think a lot of people want that. They just don't know where to go. They just don't know the first
Yeah.
step in that process.
No, and that's a interesting perspective. A mentor of mine, when I lived in Charlotte, he was a deacon of the local church, and I grew up in the church myself. Presbyterian most of my existence, and so it's not uncommon. My grandmother, who raised me, would give endlessly every week to the church, and this was a woman who raised three kids. Was took an early retirement from the airlines, which wasn't that generous of a retirement, and then still gave a lot every week to the church on Sundays. And he would always put it this way: he saw it as an investment, and so in his own right, and he say, "Hey, listen, I owe everything I have to the Lord." And I myself, in all transparency, I'm not a religious person now, and so for my own reasons, of course, but I understand the fundamentals of it very well, and so I think it's really cool that you're helping people figure out how to mash those two existences. I think they should be one. I believe that we should be one person. I mean, that's why the Faces is the conversation today, is because you're an entrepreneur, but Nick's also more than a founder. They're actually the
Right.
same person, right? And so that's why we're here. So I'd like to, hear about, how you've managed to make those two lives, since you're advising folks on it, how you've managed to make those two lives one and the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very individual process, right? I mean,
Of
if I
course.
was sitting down and if we were having a conversation as client advisor, I mean, I'd want to know, like, one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what's your earliest memory of money?
Okay. That's
What's
scary.
what's the first moment you remember? Usually it's as a kid, something to do with an allowance, something like that. But like, what was money like for you growing up? And it's always a fun conversation starter with people. I'm curious for you, Cody. Like, what was your first memory
Yeah.
of money?
That's interesting. Because the first thing that popped up to me was, you remember bookstores? I used to come to elementary schools and they'd have like bookstore week, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they'd go there and your parents give you money, you go buy books. And I always remember us not having enough money for bookstore, right?
Mm.
That was, to me, like, I grew up very underprivileged. And so for us, it was like, I only need $5, but, found like, oh, we don't have to give it. So for me, it was a painful memory because I always see everybody else get all this really cool stuff from the bookstore, and I didn't get stuff from the bookstore. So that's my earliest memory of money, and it was not a positive one, obviously, but it's a lasting one.
No, it's funny. Usually those memories aren't that positive. That's kind of what makes them so formative, right? There was someone who shared once that her first memory was that money was very dirty, like physically dirty, because every time you handle it, you had to go wash your hands. But she didn't really understand the difference between germs and, like, morally questionable. And so she
Um,
grew up with this really strange relationship with money. But like, so for you, that's a really, that kind of aligns, I think, with other parts of your story that you shared of being a founder, being an entrepreneur, pursuing a particular kind of lifestyle you have now, because it's rooted in, I don't want to put too many words to this, but I think we could safely refer to that as kind of a scarcity mindset, right? Like, well, there's not enough. There's not even enough for bookstore day at school, right? And
yeah.
so in that in that place of childhood memory, we make agreements and promises, right? And so in that example, again, not to like take this too far, but often
No.
these are where these roots produce the trunk and the branch and the leaves of our adult lives and our decisions. And in that place of there's not enough for book day, we could easily jump to, and I'm going to make sure that that, and that never happens to my kids,
Mm.
right? I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I never have to say no to book day for my kids.
Yeah. And no, I mean, it's an interesting that how that question you brought up, how it's the memory felt heavy. It like as soon as you're like, well, what's your earliest memory? And I thought about it and I was like, man, I remember what that felt like immediately. And it was, I grew up, I'm one of three brothers, and I was like, I will not be broke, right? And I always like to compare the difference between broke and poor. And I reference Dave Chappelle, the Almighty, right? The Dave Chappelle and all his wisdom, right? And he sat there and said, and he told his dad one day in a skit, he's like, "Oh, I hate being poor." He's like, "Hey, calm down, calmate, right? You're not poor. Poor is a mindset. We're broke. It's like, we just don't have anything." And that was a powerful memory for me. And but it does create a scarcity mindset, and that transitions into what you do is I hate spending money. Like I hate
Mm.
spending. Like I have a 10% rule. Like I don't spend 10% of my money. And so if it is more than 10% of my net worth, I don't purchase it. And so I have a real thing with that. I'm like, oh, like, cars are nice. I like cars, right? I like having places to live, right? They're nice. I like traveling, those nice. But I always save as much as I can. My wife even says that payroll days are my worst day of the month. And it happens twice a month. Because even if I'm paying all these staff members, even if they've worked so hard for it, I'm like, oh, I gotta pay people, and it's a real thing, and it makes me like hoard it. I hoard it almost, and that's an interesting mindset as well.
So, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think we could both riff on that for a while, of seeing how that mindset not just plays out in your money, but it plays out in your business decisions. It plays out in your relationships and your parenting. It plays out in your personal hobbies and personal wellness. I'll tell you what else. It plays out in your, I know you said you're not religious, but it plays out in your prayer life, in
Yeah.
your, when you're, it's something, it's a thread, right? That's part of you that touches all aspects of you. So this is where the fun can happen, is like, okay, well, how do we, now that we've diagnosed, now what?
Yeah.
Like, what's
No.
the treatment?
I usually take a conscious mindset. So I'm a day trader as well. So I have a small hedge fund.
Oh, there you go.
Right, right. And so now we're saying, okay, the guy who hoards cash is risky with it, right? But I treat it in the sense that the money I put into that company, that hedge fund organization, it's lost. It was invested the day I put it in. I put in as much what I could afford to lose at that time, and now it's you know a gazillion times bigger than it was, and which is great, because it turns out I'm not that bad of a day trader, right? However, when I put money into it, it was painful, right? I was like, oh, we're gonna lose this money. And then when I started trading, I was really scared to like hit the send button. I was like, oh, I don't want to hit the send button. I don't want to hit the send button. And so, yeah, I mean, it, like you said, it carries over into so many of my actions, so many of them.
Well, so I want to invite you to consider, when you're in that place of scarcity or fear related to a money decision, there's an alternative framework that we can look through, right? The one
Right.
is, oh my gosh, there's not enough, and that scarcity mindset leads to hoarding, which ultimately robs us of presence of mind. It robs us of joy. It robs us of experiences and relationships. Um, and that's, again, like, I didn't name my company Closed Fist Wealth, right? Like, nobody wants to live that way, right?
I love
Somebody
it.
asked me one time, why'd you name it Open-Handed? And I just said, well, I wasn't going to name it Closed Fist. So, but
I
the
love that.
yeah, right, yeah. So, but the alternative is, let's look at this from, the alternative to a closed fist is an open hand. The alternative to a scarcity mindset is a mindset of, there's plenty.
Yeah.
Have some of mine. We live in a
It,
resource rich world that has plenty of everything that we could ever need or want or imagine. And God's given us this great world, and he's made it for us and put us here, and he's given us dominion in the task of cultivating the world, cultivating relationships, and living and breathing and doing work here in this world, ultimately for his glory. Because, and I'll get to this in a second about the
please.
um, the centrality of, like, if we're the biggest part of our story. But another way, so yeah, the shift of framework away from scarcity is toward abundance, and the antidote to hoarding is giving. That's why I love to talk about uh, in aligning faith and generosity and legacy, because it all comes back to that opening point, that when I give, there's a couple things that are happening in my mind and my heart. The first is, I'm acknowledging I have more than I need, which is true. It's just true. It's probably true for everybody listening, and then some. The second thing is, it it acknowledges that I'm not at the center of my universe, that I'm not my chief provider. Okay. Now, again, this is getting kind
Yeah.
of spiritual, but I think that this is
No.
is all related. If it's true that God has made the world and put us here, the Bible tells us that He owns it all, and that we're stewards. He's entrusted us with the stewardship of what we have, and that He ultimately will give us everything we need. Paul wrote this, in the New Testament. He said, "My God will supply all of your needs according to His riches in glory in Christ Jesus." And needs is different than wants, right? So there's a little bit of a delineation there, but the idea of giving as a trigger to counteract that hoarding scarcity mindset, it's powerful stuff. It really,
No,
really is powerful.
and I do love it. But, I am not religious. I just don't participate. Um,
Okay.
and and you know what? I've always been open to the mindset that one day I may very well participate. Right.
Mm.
I am a person who is scarce and I want to hoard, but I also, the amount that I hoard is a portion of what it is I have. And one thing I do really love that I'm in the position to do is give, right? My wife and I have an education fund in Mexico. If you're unaware, Mexico high school isn't covered by the government, so you
Oh,
actually have
wow.
to pay for it. And so, we pay for numerous kids to attend school, out not only just out of our own pocket. We dedicate revenue for our company into that. A percentage of, we have restaurants in Mexico. We give a percentage of every Sunday, our busiest day, into that fund so that we can continue filling it every year. And shout out to the Recon Sniper Foundation, which is an organization that I've been supporting and been a part of since I joined the recon community in the Marine Corps. I give to them yearly. I sponsor a ball. Marine Corps birthday just passed by, and so I sponsor a Marine Corps ball there. Where this organization, their whole mentality is to help folks transition, help folks find community outside the Marine Corps. Because if you've been indoctrinated in the Marine Corps, you understand that you're in this, and then you get out into the world, you're like, oh, I'm all alone. And then for guys like us, we're used to being on teams. You're working with teams on the weekends. You're with teams, and then you get out to the Marine Corps. They're like, hey, you're out of the military now. Go home, all right? And you're like, home? What do you mean go home? Like, I was raised by my grandmother. My brothers are now in the Marine Corps, and they're gone doing their own thing, right? And I'm supposed to just go home. Where is that? And so that
Mm.
organization I give to as much as I possibly. And you know what though? I gave to this year amount that was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable. I didn't like. I loved what we were doing, but it was difficult to do it.
Yeah.
But once it was done, I was like, oh, the lights are still on. I'm Everything's good. So
I'm okay. All right. I'm okay. Yeah.
I must not have needed it as much as I thought I did.
Oh man,
And
I love that.
so, and that's great, and I love your direction and your approach there. And, you know, I would like to know how that Nick who gives, I mean, some really sage advice. I mean, you gave me some goosebumps for a second there. I was like, man, this is hitting home with me. I like to know how that Nick, how does he operate in everyday life, right? How does he go through life? You sound like a man of the family, and how does that man exist in this world where he's out here guiding people in such a sage financial way?
Oh man. Well, thanks. I mean, I'll tell you, it's easy to make it sound nice on a short podcast. But normal life is normal life as well. I was going to ask. I mean, you're married. You got two kids. You understand. You
Yeah.
know, sleep is a luxury, right? Well, you were in the Marine Corps before that, so you probably understood sleep is already a luxury. Well, before having kids, but yeah, I mean, it's what we're all post 2020, so pretty much everybody who wants to works at home, right?
Yeah.
And so when you work at home, you work around your. A friend of mine told me, like, we don't work at home, our kids live at the office. Thought, oh man, that's a really good reframing, because it's tough. It's tough to juggle being present and trying to live now the way I'll be glad that I did someday.
Mm.
Right? I'm growing a business. I've got four kids, and they've got a lot of needs, and our oldest is in third grade, and so, like, these are the prime years that most people in their later decades reflect back on. And most of the time I hear, gosh, I just wish that I hadn't been so worried. I
Yeah.
wish I had not been so anxious and just had been able to let loose and play with my kids more. I wish I had been present. I wish, it's been said, right? No, nobody's going to lay on their deathbed and say that they wish they had more revenue or responded to more emails or gotten more things off their list. And it's so cliche, we can kind of dismiss it, but it is so profound, we dare not, right? Like,
Yeah.
we've got opportunities now with young kids, with Little League baseball, right? Like the
Yeah.
6U team that won the championship, to be there, to celebrate, to be present with those life-building moments. And you know what? If my career waits a decade and it's on the back burner for a little while, so be it. I'd rather be present now with my kids. And that's a tough tension because you still have bills to pay, you still have, you know, like you still have to go to work, and that's a very good thing to do, and it's critical. Um, but a lot of I think a lot of, especially men, but I think anybody in business struggles with deriving a lot of identity from business, from the
Mm,
success of a sale, from the adventure of crafting a new product or project or bring something to market. Like, it's fun, it's exciting, right? Like,
it
it's a lot
is.
of fun.
It's
And it can be
enthralling.
addictive because you get in this feedback loop of people praising you and acknowledging your work and validating, and it is beautiful, and it's addictive, and it can become too important.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing we have clients come to us at telehelping for two reasons. Um, One, they need to figure out how to grow and not spend so much money. So they want to hire staff members, right, to grow or to operate their current business. Or the one you just mentioned, which is time, right? And so we have folks come to us saying, oh, I'm working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I'm doing what am I doing most of my time? I'm following up with clients, doing marketing. Because if you're in 2024 and you're not an influencer on your business,
Right?
you can't even
Good
be
luck.
like good luck. People don't understand. I have three virtual assistants who manage all my marketing, right? Just to do with Cody Hall, right? Not even telehelping. And so the idea that I would have to do that, and so I have people come to me like, all right, Cody, I'm working 60 hours a week. What can I offload to this person? Lord, it counts all day. And I think about that because I had the same moment when I used to talk about the hoarding mentality. I was a day late and a dollar short giving people responsibilities because I didn't want to spend an extra $1,500 a month hiring another virtual staff member, right? And then I sat there one day, I'm like, man, what a hypocrite. I'm dishing out all this advice about saving time and outsourcing to people, and then I myself and not outsourcing my own tasks. I turned around and hired six people within the next 3 months to offload so much. And you said a point there about putting the career on the back burner. Absolutely. People, telehelping has been in business for 4 years. I could have gotten telehelping to where it is today in 2 years if I didn't take a year and a half sabbatical because I was having a kid. I never thought I'd have a kid. Now I'm having a kid. What do you do with children, right? And so I'm like, I wanted to
So
I thought
what?
about like, well,
Hold on a second. Whoa, wait. That's huge. So now we're gonna flip this, right? I want to interview you for a second. Talk to me about what it was like for Mister. I don't know. Were you a sniper?
I was the recon guy, not a sniper, but it's a similar community. We're like cousins.
Okay. So I mean, you're a recon guy. You're a Marine,
Mhm.
driven, type A. I mean, that's a given, right? You're going from that to business owner, entrepreneur to dad, and you take a 18-month sabbatical.
And oh,
Okay.
sabbatical, right? Let's talk
Yeah,
about
talk to me
sabbatical.
about that. What
Yeah,
what
well,
prompted that? What pushed you to not just, okay, well, I'll take 6 weeks off, or that's a
yeah.
huge decision. Tell me about that.
Well, I took a huge step back because I never thought I was going to be a dad. I never wanted kids, and then we, found out that we're having kids. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know this was possible. All right, so this is happening. Super excited. I was excited from day one, and I'm like, you know what? I started thinking about it, like, well, what type of parent am I going to be? I didn't have a mom and dad really in my life. My mom is present now, but she wasn't really present during the process, and so I didn't have it. I was like, all right, well, I'm like, I want to remember this. Like they say this infant stage goes like this, and one day they come out screaming, and the next thing you know, they're crawling and they're walking and they're talking. And I didn't want to miss it. And so I went from working those, 10, 12-hour days. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to resign from the lead position of CEO and then just take a step back. And so handed over a lot of stuff to the operational team just to maintain. Like their job was to exist, right? Keep contracts, keep them rolling, maintain. And I did projects, investments, and my wife started a cafe during that time period. So it wasn't like we were sitting around doing nothing, but there were days where I forgot what month it was. And so, they were like, I'm like, oh, what month is it? And like, oh, it's June. I'm like, man, I thought it was May. Okay, great. We're further in the year than I thought. That's great. And then one day it just clicked, and I was like, oh, I got to get back. I can't be in this la la land forever. All right. But it was a scary time because, I was like, okay, I got a stagnated business. It's kind of just rolling sideways. It's making money, which is good, but also I'm not really making money. And so it was a worry period, but it gave me so much time with my son, invaluable time. And I think that period, Nick, changed how I think now, right? Because now I will sit there and I'm like, oh, my son seems like he's in a good mood, right? I'm like, it's 3 o'clock. I have no more meetings. I could definitely work on late into the evening if I wanted to, right? There's always something that I need to be doing. But you know what? I'll make it tomorrow's problem, right? And then I'll go hang out with my son. So I'm definitely biased towards my family now, because, right, he's 2 years old or 2.5 now, and I'm gonna blink my eye. He's gonna be going to school full time, and they just go so fast. And I stopped putting so much value into how much money I was making. Right, it's all about how much I was making, into like, oh, well, like what life am I providing for my kids? Like, what
Mm.
experience is he having right now? And then that took me on a different path. Right, took me on a completely different path.
That's there's a lot there we could unpack, but I just want to give a full-hearted way to go, man. Like,
Appreciate
yes, that's awesome. Way to go, pausing on the gas of the successful business, breaking away and being a present dad for a while. Because that's the kind of life decision goal alignment stuff that I work on with clients. Like, it's okay to take a sabbatical. It's okay to go on an expensive vacation with your family. Go book the ski trip with your kids, right? Like, take the afternoon off. I'll tell you what, it's 2024. We are up to our eyeballs and beyond in productivity tools and AI and faster and this and that. And it is
everything.
dizzying. And we're all taking the most advantage of it that we can, except in one key area. We are not acknowledging how much time these tools are supposed to be saving us, because instead of spending 4 hours drafting a document that AI helped us do in 45 minutes, now we're filling up that remaining 3 hours and 15 minutes with other stuff. Instead
Yeah.
of saying, you know what? That's tomorrow's problem. I'm done. I'm done for today. I'm going to go and build Legos or ride bikes or play baseball or help my wife with dinner or just go for a walk and decompress a little, because the brain was never designed to run at the pace of a smartphone. And that's what we've all been like, led into over time, just by having the internet as a tool that we all use every day. And so coming back to reality and the slowness of life and just letting your heart and mind and soul take a deep breath is, man, it's so important. I sound all new agey here. I promise I'm not. It's just this is the
No,
normal life stuff that we've completely lost sight of.
no, I agree. And that's the thing that, I started telling people nowadays, because I have people come to me when I'm chatting with them, like, oh, I took a year and a half off. They're like, well, how'd you do it? I'm like, well, I had to hire people to do my job. All right. And I had to step aside. And I knew the company wasn't going to grow. I tell people all the time, like, virtual staff will help you run your business, but by themselves, they will not grow your business. And so I have people come to me all the time, like, I want salespeople to grow my business. I'm like, well, great. Who's going to drive them? And I'm like, so if you're trying to do less and you hire salespeople to do a job, they're not going to grow your business, right? They'll run through your
Right.
motions for you. They need a musher. And so if you're trying to do less and then grow, it's not going to work. You have to pick one, right? There is always an opportunity cost, right? And there was a point in time where I wanted to, sell telehelping, 5 years into it. Well, probably not going to, because I decided to start prioritizing being a father. And that is that give and take that we talk about. And um, I just want them to have the best life possible. And what I'm doing right now provides that. It's providing them a really good life. I don't need more. Not more would be cool, right? So we talk about measurements of success, right? Launching a new product, getting a new client, like those are all great. And I love ending my day saying, "Oh, three new, three new clients today. Great wife high five, right? Pick up the kids, spin them in a circle." And so those are always good days. However, I settle for days that don't have events, like just no noise. Like the business is ran the way it's supposed to. There's no fires, just so I can get off work and be like, okay, cool, let's hang out together. So, when you talk about that and you look back on how you've balanced your world, how you give your advice, what would be, your regret? If you say, oh, one thing I think about all the time is, oh, I made these opportunity costs, but man, I really wish I would have done this. Looking at that balance you're always trying to strike. Is there something that ever lingers with you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think everybody has regrets of some kind. Um, you know, eh, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. That was one dream I didn't get to pursue. That
Mm,
would have been a pretty cool dream.
yeah,
But even in that, and I share that because that's kind of an extreme example. But the lifestyle of a fighter pilot is not conducive to the lifestyle of being a dad.
yeah,
So something I thought I really wanted, that I daydreamed about, that I devoted years and years toward that goal, and I'm really glad I actually didn't get it.
yeah.
So
That's a really good perspective. And I share that. So funny thing, I used to want to be a fighter pilot too. Like I used to want to be a fighter pilot. How cool would that be, right?
right?
We get to fly, especially the new planes nowadays.
Oh, it's
Um,
crazy.
but you're right. You know, I coming out of the military, I was offered jobs opportunities with, different agency groups, right? We'll refer to them as the agencies. And
Sure.
um and how cool would it have been to do clandestine stuff, right? And I know guys I look at today who are heroes to me that they got the opportunity to serve with. These guys, they did it all. They got deployed all the time. They found themselves in every climb, in every place, in every conflict, right? And they are exactly what Marines want to be. We want to be the person putting our hill to the throat of the enemy, right? And they were that person in the shadows and in the light. And I'm like, man, how cool is that person, right? Like, how badass is that guy? And then I realized I see his wife's, right? Plurality, right? I see the relationship they have with their kid, right? And then I think to myself, I'm like, it's a sacrifice. And I think that's one thing that I
Yeah.
wanted to highlight with the faces is that there's always a give and take. And my wife will tell you during the election, they tried to cancel me at least once a month on Facebook because I was the husband of the restaurant owner who had opinions about politics. And I had opinions on both sides. I sat in the middle and I said everyone was wrong. I just thought one side was less wrong than the other. And everyone hated me for it. And I realized I'm like, okay, so again, Cody, there's an opportunity cost, right? Sharing my opinion, expressing my, contrarian approach to things could cost on one end, right? Working hard, you miss the family, miss not missing the family, miss working hard. And so, Nick, you've said a lot of really sage points, and I think things that I'll probably sit here and ponder about for a while. But what I want to start thinking about is being that you've gotten me to think the way I've gotten to think, and then you started interviewing me during my podcast. Like, wow, I can only think about how cool it'd be to be one of your clients and we'll get to work with you. So I'd really like to take opportunity now and figure out, well, how do folks get in contact with Nick? Who's Nick's client? And that way, because if I'm kind of married to my financial advisor at this point, and they do well for me, so I appreciate them. But
Yeah.
how do people make you their fin advisor? How do they get in contact with you?
Well, first off, I just want to thank you again. I mean, I've so enjoyed the conversation. It's kind of gone all over the place, and it's all been good.
Yeah.
And I feel like we could. There's so many things that we could keep talking about and enjoy. But you know, to answer your question a little bit more directly, so I'm based out of Atlanta, but I do work virtually. Um, I want to clarify one thing though, because a lot of times when people hear financial anything, we kind of
Hmm.
walk in with like, oh, okay, I kind of know what you are. Are you an Edward
Of
Jones
course.
guy? Are you do you sell insurance? Like whole lot, like what's your thing? Or like, oh, you're a financial planner. Okay, so you're under one of the big umbrellas then, right? So let me just clarify a couple of things. So I own
Clear
the
it up
firm.
for us.
That's right. So I own the firm outright. Founder owner. I don't sell products. I don't sell insurance policies. I don't sell investment stuff. I am a fee only comprehensive financial planner. My ideal client is probably somebody a lot like you, honestly, Cody. I mean, somebody in their 30s, 40s, maybe even early 50s. They're a busy entrepreneur. They've had some success with their business, and they're lacking the financial direction to know what to do and kind of how to leverage that business into the lifestyle that they want. Whether they need a virtual assistant or whether they need, to implement a retirement savings plan and kind of plan for the next chapter of their lives. I come alongside them. I spent, I used to work for my dad. All right. So I worked in family business. And anybody who's worked in a family business, you know what it's like. If you're in the family or out of the family, that's kind of the two categories of people in family business, right? Well, I've been both sides of that. And I see those problems. I empathize with them. They're real problems. You're talking about business at dinner every night. And it's, it can be really stressful. Those people need help, and they need a friend to come alongside them and help be a reassuring voice. They need some strategy. They need some some financial steps. But those are people that I love to help. And I've just got a simple process. It's like 3 steps of clarifying, aligning, and then achieving, the strategies that make sense for them.
That's
But yeah,
wonderful. Yeah, Nick, I mean, that's being a family business is tough. And then, my wife and I, have the restaurants, and, we ended up hiring out operations and everything for him because I was tired of always talking about the restaurants, right? For something such a small portion of our portfolio, um, beautiful. You get attached to your business, like it's your baby, and so it's hard not to want to talk about it all the time. And so having someone to come in and advise you in that respect is great. And again, Nick, I want to thank you for coming on. This has been an awesome podcast. I've enjoyed our conversations very much. And so, everyone, thank you for having Nick on here. Again, my name is Cody, the host and CEO of Telehelping and the Faces podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a like, give us a follow on YouTube or Spotify. If you know folks who you think would be great on this podcast, please refer them to us at info@telehelping.com. We're looking forward to have your continued support. Thank you all, and have a great day.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.